Hello, YouTube.com. Today I will be responding to Randal O'Toole. And this is an article he made a while back called The New York Subway Was Never Private. Um, and I'm not going to read the entire article because I don't think that's really relevant for what I want to talk about, anyways. So I'll read this section here. In a true free market, subways would never be built in the United States today, and I doubt they would be built anywhere. Private subways exist in Hong Kong and Tokyo, but these cities are extraordinarily dense due to land use restrictions that have prevented people from living at the densities they would prefer, and that would make subways non viable. That can hardly be considered a true free market. So, so here's my presentation. So, just the quote again. So, he brings up Hong Kong, which he claims has a density of 66,000 people per square mile, which is very dense. So, um, officially, Hong Kong's population density is about 17,500 people per square mile, but demographer Cox's Survey of World Urban Areas estimates that the developed area has more than 66,000 people per square mile, about the same as Manhattan, but about 12 times more than the New York urban area as a whole. So, so he is correct that Hong Kong is extraordinarily dense. Now, it's not completely unprecedented. Like we can look at Manila, right? We're going to World Population Review. .com, and it says Manila is the world's most densely populated city with 42,857 people per square mile, or 111,000 people. Sorry, 42,857 people per square kilometer, and 111,002 people per square mile. So, my understanding is Manila wouldn't have a whole lot of land usage restrictions, and it's incredibly dense, and people are living there voluntarily. Nobody is coercing anyone into living in Manila. So while Hong Kong may have a very strictly regulated land market that maybe is designed to encourage high densities, well, Manila is already very dense and doesn't, to my knowledge, have such restrictions. Um, and you can, so there's that to consider, right? And then there's also Manhattan, which is very regulated, but nobody is forced to live there. Pretty much anyone who lives in Manhattan could choose to live somewhere else. And it has 80,000 people per square mile. So, would people live voluntarily at Hong Kong densities? I would make the case that they would. Maybe I wouldn't live at a density that high. I might do 40,000 people per square mile would be the density I could live in. But if you look at Manila and Manhattan, people are choosing voluntarily to live in those places. Nobody is being coerced to live there. They are not city states where you can't move around freely. Um, so let us move on to the next section. While Randal O'Toole is correct that Hong Kong is extraordinarily dense, Tokyo is not extraordinarily dense, nor are Tokyo and Hong Kong the only places that ever had profitable rail transit. Well, one thing, this is just a technicality. I get the point Randal O'Toole's trying to make. The Hong Kong rail transit system isn't technically private; it's a state-owned enterprise, but it does turn a profit. So he is correct that it does turn a profit. Um, but it is technically not a private enterprise. Um, so I can't find an actual academic source on this, but from what I can find just on the Indian news media, right? The Indian news media seems to think that the Delhi metro is profitable, and Delhi has about 29,000 people per square mile, and most of my um, data on population density I get from worldpopulationreview.com. And this is from Transport for London. if it would load, okay. And so here is transport for London. And if we look at it, they had a big decrease in fare box recovery, but now they're at a 130% fare box recovery, at least for the underground. The rest of it, not so much, but they project the underground will eventually have a 184% fare box recovery, and the Docklands light rail will eventually be profitable and have a 107% fare box recovery. So, again, London is not a very dense city, right? London has about what is it, 14,000 people per square mile. That's similar to Philadelphia or Chicago. That's less dense than New York City, right? New York City is an American city, again, that people voluntarily live in. Um, but London is less dense, and yet it has a fare box recovery of 130%. So it is profitable or pretty close to profitable. Then, according to at least this Wikipedia article, the thing the Wikipedia article cites, let's see, okay, okay, so the Osaka Metro, at least according to Wikipedia's article on fare box recovery ratios, has a 208% fare box recovery. So again, that's not Hong Kong, that's not Tokyo, um, but of course the source it uses in Japanese. So I'm just gonna have to take um, I'm gonna have to take Wikipedia's word for it. Um, and then Osaka itself is denser than Tokyo, 31,000 people per square mile. But again, that's not Hong Kong levels of density. And then, while the Seoul transit system isn't profitable, it is used very heavily, right? According to this article here, um, let's see, this article here, 40% of trips were done with public transportation in the Seoul in Seoul. So, um, the article is called "An Examination of the Accuracy of Activity-Based Travel Simulation Against Smart Card and Navigation Device Data." That is a mouthful. So how dense is Tokyo actually? Well, according to the government of Tokyo, as of 2015, roughly 13.5 million people lived in the political entity of Tokyo, which is a land area of roughly 2,191 square miles. This is roughly 6,158 persons per square kilometer. If we were to convert square kilometers to square miles, we get 846 square miles. 13.5 million people living over 846 square miles is roughly 16,000 people per square mile. And so, is that a particularly high population density? Well, and then of course, the um, greater Tokyo area, according to World Population View, the greater Tokyo area encompasses 5,240 square miles with 37 million people in it, which is roughly 7,000 people per square mile. Not very dense at all. So while this is denser than American cities, there are American cities that are as dense or denser than Tokyo. Tokyo's density by global standards is actually pretty normal. For example, according to the US Census, Philadelphia is 12,000 people per square mile. And then, according to Demographia, Wendell Cox's website, the Los Angeles urbanized area, one that Randal O'Toole likes to talk about, has 7,600 people per square mile. And the Paris urbanized area, or the Unité Urbaine, according to Demographia, had 10,000 people per square mile, denser than Tokyo, and the city proper of Paris is roughly 50,000 people per square mile, denser than the city of Tokyo. But we can go to World Population Review, Mexico City. So according to World Population Review for Mexico City has roughly 16,000 residents per square mile. And according to Randal O'Toole, Mexico is a place with less land development restrictions than a place like Tokyo. So Tokyo's density is actually normal by world standards. Um, and then here I got this from Demographia, world population by urban area density. And um, this is from the from their article, World Urban Areas, Built Up Urban Areas or Urban Agglomerations, 12th Annual Edition, April 2016. So according to Demographia, over 51% of the Earth's population lives at population densities of roughly 10,000 to 25,000 people per square mile, and these are urbanized areas, not city propers. Right, so this is talking about urbanized areas or metro areas, or the census, what the census would call an urbanized area. And we see that the majority of people are living at 10,000 to 25,000 people per square mile, which is comparable to Tokyo. Tokyo is somewhere in there. And then the next largest group is even denser, 25,000 to 50,000 people per square mile. Then to get below that, we only have 12% of the Earth's population living at densities below 10,000 people per square mile. And then an even smaller group of people live at densities below 5,000 people per square mile. So, uh, while Randal O'Toole may think that Tokyo is excessively dense, by global standards, according to Demographia data, Tokyo's urban densities are quite normal. And while they might point to global trends of the size of urbanized areas increasing, those urbanized areas are still much denser than the ones found in the United States, Canada, Australia, or other similar places. So if population density doesn't explain the profitability of Tokyo Transit, what does? Well, some of it is probably cultural. East Asian people probably have a greater propensity for using public transportation. A Pew Research survey found that the majority of Asian Americans would prefer greater walkability in favor of greater access to space and yard sizes, whereas Americans of other races or ethnicities preferred greater space to walkability. This is probably a result of East Asian culture being less individualistic and thus more comfortable with more shared space and less private space, and thus less likely to mind sharing public transportation with others. And one thing you'll notice, with the exception of like maybe Mongolia, right? In most Asian countries, public transportation usage is pretty high. So I'll open up the study here. So, anyways, majority of Americans prefer a community with big houses, even if local amenities are far away. 6 in 10 white adults say they would prefer communities that are more spread out, as do about half of black adults, 54%, and Hispanic adults, 51%. By comparison, 62% of Asian adults would prefer more walkable communities with smaller homes. And then the other reason for the public transportation use in both Hong Kong and in Tokyo probably has nothing to do with the residential density at all. So the Tokyo Yokohama Central Business District has 2.4 million jobs, making it one of the largest in the world, um, which is just a really incredible number of jobs in such a small area of land. Or the Yamanote Loop has over 4.25 million jobs. And so the central business districts of these Asian cities are really huge. Let's see if we can get Hong Kong here. The let's see. Okay, so I guess it's not as big as that one. I was wrong about that. But the Tokyo Central Business District is really huge, 4.2 million jobs in that area. So while Tokyo's residential densities aren't particularly high, it does have a robust central business district. And then, while Randal O'Toole tried to argue that you need to have excessively high population densities in order to have effective public transit, he's made several articles arguing that raising population density doesn't affect driving. So, for example, do densities matter? Um, where he tries to argue that density doesn't really affect driving all that much. Lying with statistics. And facts versus ideology. So he has made several. That was really bizarre. Anyways, that was weird. But yeah, he's made several articles on why residential densities don't matter when it comes to transit and with driving. But in this article about this New York subway never being private, he tries to argue that they do matter. So he's being inconsistent here. Do densities matter or not? And the position I would take would be the view of this study here. Does compact development increase or reduce traffic congestion? The study finds that there's a small, independent reduction in vehicle miles traveled because of increases in population density, independent of other things like job densities or self-selection. And the reason for it is simply because you have shorter trip distances. That would be the main mechanism. It doesn't give you like a gigantic reduction, but it does seem to do something. So that's what the study found, is that by reducing trip distances, you get a reduction in per capita vehicle miles. Uh, so densities probably have a small independent effect on people's driving behavior. So I'm Thomas Christensen, signing out.